The morning sun had just started painting the small town in gold. The streets were alive with the hum of everyday life, cars rushing by, people hurrying to work, and kids with backpacks slung over their shoulders. Among them was Ethan, a 12-year-old boy with messy hair, a shy smile, and a heart far bigger than he realized. Ethan was walking to school as usual, humming softly to himself, when he noticed an elderly woman standing at the corner of the busy intersection. She clutched her handbag tightly, her hands trembling as she tried to step forward. Cars sped by, horns blaring. No one stopped. People glanced her way but kept walking. The city had become numb to small acts of kindness. But Ethan, he couldn't look away. He slowed down, watching her from across the street. Something in his chest tightened, that quiet pull of empathy that kids feel before the world teaches them to ignore it. He looked both ways, ran across, and approached her carefully. "Ma'am, do you need help crossing?" he asked, his voice soft but certain. The old woman looked up, her cloudy blue eyes meeting his. She blinked in surprise as if no one had spoken to her in a long time. "Oh, young man, that would be lovely," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan smiled and offered his arm. "Don't worry, I got you." Together they stepped into the crosswalk. Cars slowed as Ethan raised his hand confidently, guiding her through the chaos. For a moment, the city seemed to pause, one small boy leading an old soul across a world too busy to care. When they reached the other side, she squeezed his hand. "Thank you, dear. You remind me of someone I once knew," she said with a nostalgic smile. Ethan grinned. "My mom says we should always help when we can." The woman's smile softened. "Your mother raised you right." He nodded proudly. "She tries. It's just us now, since Dad passed." Her face fell, a flicker of sadness crossing her eyes. "I'm sorry, dear." "It's okay," Ethan said, trying to sound brave. "Mom says he's watching over us." The woman hesitated, then placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I'm sure he is." There was something in her tone, not pity, but understanding, like she knew that kind of pain. As Ethan prepared to leave, she asked, "What's your name, son?" "Ethan." "That's a strong name," she said softly. "I'm Margaret." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Margaret," he said with an innocent smile before heading off to school. That night, as Ethan told his mom about the encounter, she smiled warmly. "You did the right thing, honey. The world needs more hearts like yours." The next morning, as Ethan walked the same route, he noticed something strange. The same old lady, Margaret, standing at the same intersection again. He rushed over. "Hi, Mrs. Margaret, need help again?" She turned, startled but smiling. "Oh, Ethan, you're here again." "Of course, let's get you across safely." He offered his arm once more, and she took it without hesitation. After they crossed, she looked down the street for a long moment. "You remind me so much of my grandson," she murmured. "Where is he?" Ethan asked innocently. Her lips quivered. He's gone, dear. It's been years." Ethan's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, I bet he was nice." "He was kind," she said, voice trembling. "Just like you." Days passed, and Ethan began to see Margaret more often. Always at that same corner, always waiting. Sometimes he'd find her lost in thought. Other times she'd bring him candy, or just smile as if his presence gave her a reason to stand a little taller. One rainy afternoon, Ethan noticed she wasn't there. He felt a strange emptiness, the kind that comes when something small but meaningful is missing from your day. The following morning she was back, but something was different. She looked pale, weaker, her umbrella shaking as the wind picked up. "Mrs. Margaret, you shouldn't be out here, it's cold," he said, running to her side. "I wanted to see you," she whispered. "You make the world feel kind again." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "You make it kind, too." When they crossed the street, she stopped halfway, clutching her chest. Ethan panicked. "Mrs. Margaret, are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "Just dizzy. Don't worry, dear." He helped her sit down on a bench nearby. A passing woman noticed and called for help. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived. Ethan stayed until the paramedics loaded her in. "Will she be okay?" he asked, tears forming. One of them smiled gently. "We'll take good care of her, son." That evening, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. He asked around the neighborhood, but no one knew where she lived. Days turned into a week, and Margaret never returned to that corner. Then one morning, as Ethan walked to school, he saw a black car parked by the curb. A man stepped out, well-dressed, with eyes tired from grief. He approached Ethan. "Are you Ethan?" the man asked softly. "Yes, sir. My name's Daniel. I'm Margaret's grandson." Ethan froze. "Her grandson?" Daniel nodded. She passed away last week." Ethan's heart sank. "Oh, I'm sorry." Daniel smiled faintly. "Before she went, she told the nurses about a boy. A kind boy who helped her cross the street every day. She said you reminded her of me." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "I just wanted to help." Daniel handed him a small envelope. "She wanted you to have this." Ethan opened it carefully. Inside was a photo. A young soldier in uniform holding a baby with "My Ethan" and "Forever Brave" written on the back. He frowned. "Wait, her grandson's name was Ethan?" Daniel nodded, his voice trembling. "Yes, I was named after my father, her son. He died before I was born." Ethan looked stunned. The pieces clicked in his mind, her affection, her words, her tears. She hadn't just seen a kind boy. She had seen her family in him, a reflection of the love she had lost. Daniel continued, "You gave her peace in her final days. Thank you for that." Ethan couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears spilling freely. Before leaving, Daniel placed a small box in his hands. "She wanted you to have this too." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, engraved with the words, "Kindness never goes unnoticed." Ethan wore it every day after that. He never told many people the story, but his mother noticed how often he looked at the bracelet and smiled quietly. Years later, when Ethan grew up, he would still walk past that same intersection, and every time he'd pause, look both ways, and remember the woman who taught him that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can echo across generations. And as he'd walk away, he'd whisper softly, "I'll keep helping, Mrs. Margaret. I promise."